Hello, role-playing people, and in this episode I want to revisit the factions of Demon the Fallen and hopefully share a different perspective on them, analyzing them from the perspective of trauma, or rather, a response to trauma, as opposed to simply pointing out their flaws without any explanation, like I did in the previous episodes on this topic. I've noticed it's very difficult for players, my own included, mind you, to choose a faction which really fits the character and concept they have in mind, and I think that is because the choice to serve one group or another is never truly rewarding, and it probably isn't even a free, willing choice. I don't think advancing the agenda of one faction will truly make the character feel fulfilled or give them a sense that they are making the world a better place, even when it comes to those groups who are arguably trying to better the world. And that is what I think makes a choice like this one particularly difficult for players. You're not necessarily choosing between good or bad, or one good thing and another good thing, or between hope and despair, but you are choosing between different responses to the collective trauma of having lost the war, having watched yourself or others commit unspeakable atrocities, and being imprisoned in the pit. All the factions have some degree of hope for a better outcome, even if said better outcome can only occur after euthanizing the entire world. Raveners, I'm looking at you. But each of them also has a tragic flaw, if we can call it that, which, in essence, is an emotional and ideological view which has been hammered into the minds and souls of these entities during the most painful moment of their existence. Just imagine this. Somebody locks you in an empty room with the worst bully you've ever known, and the bully says, "While we are here, but also when we get out of here, you're going to behave like I tell you to. If you don't, I'm going to beat you every day until that door opens." It's obvious in this example that any air quotes choice you make in this situation is done under duress. You are clearly being coerced by a bully, or an archduke, why not, in the case of the pit, who is stronger than you, into behaving in a certain way or performing certain services. The pit worked a lot like this. It's a prison in which the strongest made the rules and the weaker obeyed or were destroyed, all while you occasionally watched, whether it was real or not, keep in mind. You watched humanity suffer. You were shown the biggest atrocities in the world of mortals as if being played on a screen. It's either that or sensory deprivation. You cannot change the channel on this TV. So the pit was designed to punish, to ruthlessly torment the rebels, endlessly. But then they noticed some of them are occasionally summoned out of the pit and can return to the world of mortals, which gave them hope, but also forced them into adopting certain attitudes towards that and the horrors they had been shown. This is their trauma. And now, in each faction, we can see a response to that trauma, an emotional state which just keeps going, it keeps lingering, because as a human being, you get angry, you get scared, and ultimately you know it goes away. It's not permanent. Well, for them, it didn't go away. It didn't go away for millennia. They were force-fed those negative emotions throughout their entire imprisonment. So it is as if it permeated them. It lingers with them still. The Raveners were predominantly angry, enraged at everyone and everything, themselves, the loyalist host, humanity, creation. It is that rage which drives them to stand against impossible odds, to always choose fight instead of flight, to react quickly and ruthlessly, and they're frequently the last ones standing in a physical confrontation, but it also robbed them of their ability to see kindness, compassion, the good things in the world, which are there still. The faction is best represented by Devourers, and we know Devourers don't have patience. anymore. They are done thinking, they are done talking. Their way or the highway. Why? Because they're angry, impulsive, they need to get to a conclusion, and they need it now. If said conclusion is the destruction of the world, as is the case for Raveners, so be it. At least we do it quickly. So their response to the trauma of failure and suffering is to get mad, to undo their mistake through destruction. Yeah, well, if I can't have it, then no one will. It either works the way I wanted it to, or I'm burning it all down. Oh, we've already failed? Good, fetch me the gasoline. That is the Raveners' attitude towards the pain they've endured. They could try to look at the possibilities of being in the world of mortals before deciding to destroy everything, but they won't. Now, let's look at a faction which is often considered the good guys, and I do mean Reconcilers, of course. The Reconcilers seem to predominantly feel guilt, maybe shame. They thought this rebellion was a good thing, but it went wrong. It went so wrong. And now they don't know how to even begin fixing this. But if the loyalist host could just please forgive them and come back into the world, they could fix it and make it better. They have the power of the giver on their side. Oh, giver, what have we done? It hurts so bad. We can't live with ourselves, but even if we're going to suffer for eternity, please at least forgive humanity. We were wrong to rebel. Now please just end this suffering. Really? Were they wrong? And what would be the solution, the antidote to this suffering? To strip humanity of consciousness and effectively lobotomize them into a state of bliss? A choice was made long ago, and it makes you feel guilty and ashamed even today because it went wrong and it caused suffering. Okay, well, why not learn from that mistake instead of rushing to undo it, instead of begging your abusers to forgive you and fix your mess? What if the giver and host are gone forever? Does that mean the world cannot be saved anymore? And which great benevolent God would thrust the world into endless suffering? What, to punish everyone? It makes no sense. If the giver is good, then this outcome is not a result of the giver's will, but the Reconcilers are at the same time seeing themselves as powerless to fix anything and guilty beyond reasonable doubt, making everything their fault because, well, that's what guilt and shame do to someone. They make people beat themselves up. They could look to the possibilities of re-establishing a benevolent and healthy connection with mortals, realizing that, despite their past mistake, humanity and the world has endured. But they won't. Now let's look at the heroes looking for a savior, the Luciferins. The Luciferins, for all their talk, are fanatical but also dependent, which leads them to denial. We did not lose the war, that was a temporary setback. Lucifer is around, we just need to find him, that's all. And once we do, he will lead us to the glorious future we have been working towards since time immemorial. They systematically refuse to believe that Lucifer ever made a mistake, they idolize him, but they know they can never become like him. So instead of imitating him as a leader and rebel, and taking responsibility for what's going to happen and a potential course of action, right? Themselves taking on the role of leader, they're still waiting and hoping to find him and get him back so he can make all the choices for them. They have externalized and projected their self-confidence and strength onto Lucifer. And unbeknownst to them, Lucifer has changed. He's come to the realization that this rebellion might have been what the giver expected of him in order for humanity to become aware and responsible for the world received as a gift, and that the giver might be dead because shards of her are embedded in each and every mortal. The war is over and lost. The loyalists are gone. The only thing left to do now is to keep loving and protecting humanity against the depredations of the Earthbound. That's it. Lucifer has no intention of leading this faction because they have become abusive to humanity. So the irony here is huge. The Luciferins aren't fanatically loyal to Lucifer's actual ideals and goals, but instead they are loyal to what they think his ideals are, but they couldn't be further from them. They could take their time and try to really remember what the purpose of the rebellion was. And once that's done, stop waiting for Lucifer to save them and actually follow his example, the example he set. But they won't. Now let's look at the gluttons of Demon the Fallen, the Faustians. Faustians are vengeful greed and lust for power incarnate. They are angry, but not angry enough to want to destroy the whole world. They definitely seek no forgiveness, and they don't care much about Lucifer either. What they care about is acquiring wealth, which in this case comes in the form of faith and mortal resources. You can almost hear them say, when I acquire so much faith that I can rewrite creation, my past won't matter anymore, not my sins, not my torment. Why face the pain of my past actions and my fallen, weakened state when I can just get over it? Keep going, keep hoarding, take over the entire world like a virus or like God himself until no one can oppose me. I built this world according to the will of the giver to be given to humanity, but no, I'm taking it for myself. Like a weak, spineless self-help guru who turns toxic and pretends to be some kind of superhuman no one else can be, demanding more and more to the detriment of the people he's supposed to be helping and bettering, demanding more money by this course, by that online lesson, I am the way, you are nothing without me. And all of a while, this vulnerable, immature person isn't bettering the world in any way. They're just desperately trying to stay in control, to stay in power, to reinforce an otherwise fragile ego through external means, even if it means abusing and bullying others, instead of looking inward and acknowledging their vulnerability, inspiring through genuine dedication and honest example. See, Faustians have a really good plan. It makes sense and it's quite effective, except they see humanity as just a tool, just a means of obtaining their own goals. What happens when the world is at their feet? They rewrite reality and have everything they ever wanted. Will they give as the giver did? No, they won't. Instead, they'll do exactly what Michael did: control, punish, abuse. Now, they could look inward instead of outward and acknowledge their frailty, the same frailty that is within all mortals, and realize that this world is meant for humanity, not for the fallen. They could share it. They could try to truly elevate mortals to greater awareness and strength, but they won't. Alright, that was all the factions. Thank you very much for... Oh wait, there's the kryptics too. Kryptics are, in one word, anxious. In the pit, they noticed things can change, like when Zaforiel was pulled out, but then they realized there are so many things in play beyond their perception in the mortal world which can control or harm them. There are so many things that can still go wrong even after they make it out of the pit, and the fear that so many things can go wrong and harm them as they did before leads them to avoid making any big, serious or hard decision, avoid being on anyone's radar, from Earthbound to maybe loyalists to mortal mages. Just lay low, stay on the move, gather all the information that can reveal more about what's out there. Once our worries are banished, then we can play our cards. But the thing is, they cannot build anything worthwhile without taking a risk and putting themselves out there. You can't hide forever just to keep yourself safe without ultimately becoming inconsequential, affecting the world and making a difference less and less day by day. Certainly, the fact that they are gathering information, especially true name syllables, is amazing. They are the only faction who consistently does that, and maybe one day it will pay off. But when? When do you know you have enough names and it's safe to make a move? Who decides that? Arimal? He's mostly absent from the dealings of his faction, so then who is actually in charge? And the answer is no one. The kryptics really have no direction or clear goal, which, depending on circumstance, can be extremely detrimental for them as a faction. It can divide and break them. So you see, each faction gives players the choice between what is effectively one trauma response or another, really. One group is dominated by uncontrollable destructive rage, another is choked with a guilt they just cannot bear, another is fervently in denial of its leader's failures, expecting him to lead them to a glorious future they believe they cannot achieve by themselves. Another is vengefully, abusively greedy, relying on hoarding external resources as a means of obtaining inner power. And the last group is both anxious and avoidant, skeptical and maybe even paranoid, hoping that once they know enough about their potential threats, they will have nothing to fear anymore and they can begin doing something worthwhile. Yeah. Hopefully, in this light, you can see how each approach is wrong in its own way. It's biased and sees only little pieces of the larger puzzle, even though to some degree it works for now. It keeps that faction going. I've noticed a lot of players come into Demon wanting to play the faction that helps humanity and makes the world a better place, which is perfectly understandable, but to be fair, there is no such faction. There is no such faction. The desire to heal the world and the mortals within it is always an individual pursuit of some fallen. And the presence of these, air quotes, prison gangs, which are the factions, is just another broken bridge in your way, preventing you from getting where you want. The purpose of these factions isn't to fulfill the character. It's to create conflict, tension, drama. It's to stand against the character. Adhering to one or another won't further the character's own goals unless their goals coincide perfectly with the goals of the group, which is rarely the case. No, factions are not an extension of your character. They are standalone entities in their own right, which a lot of the Fallen adhere to because they were coerced, because they made a choice at their lowest point of vulnerability. They do not, at any point, see things clearly or objectively, and your choice of faction does not have to represent your character and what they are about. The good part about all of this is characters can change factions or even abandon all of them, though probably with great difficulty. There is nothing stopping a character who is a great leader and a visionary from at least attempting to create their own faction. We know there are renegades who oppose the courts, so being in a court is ultimately optional, and we know whatever allegiance a fallen swore during their imprisonment might no longer stand now that they've felt human emotions and they've had their torment tempered to some degree. While a character cannot choose a different house, they can certainly choose their court and faction, or they can choose to only be part of a faction declaratively, marginally, without really furthering the goal of said faction, focusing on their own goals instead. It's risky. It's a dangerous attitude to have in the cruel and unforgiving world of Demon the Fallen, but it's not impossible for such a character to survive and maybe even thrive. That being said, don't look at these societies in black and white when it comes to their morality as mortals would perceive it. Oh, reconcilers are good because they seek forgiveness, while raveners are bad because they seek a very drastic end to suffering. All of the characters in Demon the Fallen are acting emotionally. They're acting from a place of deep, unimaginably painful trauma, but also from a place of newfound human emotion. And emotions themselves are not bad. They're here to teach you something. They're like little alarm bells going off. Hey, you might want to watch out for this. Remember, the rebellion itself was started with the best intentions in mind, well, as a result of Arimal's worry, his anxiety, but let's say it started with the best intentions in mind, and unfortunately, it backfired quite tragically and shattered creation. The desire to do good doesn't always lead to a good outcome. There is choice and consequence. There is trauma and response, with various degrees of awareness to your own response. Some characters might become more aware and learn, while others might not. And I think this is actually what a lot of World of Darkness games explore. The way a group of characters with similar traits deal with past trauma, individual or collective. If you look at it from this perspective, a lot of clans, houses, tribes, traditions, the legions in Wraith, they all come with some kind of baggage. It's probably easier to see it when it comes to clans or houses. You know, the Bruja, very much like Devourers, lose their temper quickly. Defilers, like Toreador, are obsessed with beauty, manipulation, and projecting a certain image. The Ventru and Devils are expected to rule and uphold a certain etiquette while doing it, and so on. It's easier to see in these instances when a clan flaw or weakness is clearly defined as such in the books, right? This is the clan, this is their weakness. But we should look beyond that a little bit when deciding how we're going to play the character. Why is that weakness there? What does it mean? Maybe it's not so easy to see the same pattern when it comes to factions, but the factions in Demon the Fallen are very well thought out in this regard. Maybe we can also look at the house flaws from this perspective, exploring the devil's foolish bravado and desperate attempt at heroism in the hopes of getting over the shame and the feeling of being less than they were before, or the malefactor's fear and anger at the fact that they have always been rejected by humanity, seemingly more than other houses. But we will have to do this in another episode. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, have fun, and don't forget to play.